Well, welcome to Tech Talk here on WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, Orlando's news and talk. I'm Greg Rhodes here with David Leavitt, president and founder of Refresh Computer Superstore. And you can contact the Refresh Computer Superstore by calling their free tech support hotline at 407-478-8200. Or if you have any other questions during the show, go and leave an open mic using the WDBO app. You can also check out the website over at refreshcomputers.net or stop in at the Refresh Computer Superstore in Longwood at 820 East State Road 434, just 3.5 miles east of I-4 in Longwood. Store hours are Monday through Saturday, 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. And if you're listening to the show here on Saturday, that means you still have time to stop by. They'll be open until 7 p.m. today. And now, the man himself, David Leavitt, and our special guest today, right, David?
That's right. We have a special guest today, Greg, and I want to personally thank Sheriff Lemma for joining us here today because we're going to talk a lot about Seminole County law enforcement technology today, and just a really cool topic and a really cool guy to have here on the radio show with us. And I've learned from knowing Sheriff Lemma over the years that no offense, Sheriff, but you're a little bit of a nerd yourself.
Yeah.
and
we like nerds here on Refresh.
That's right. I'm the oldest nerd I know. So anyhow, we're going to talk a lot about Seminole County and the technology that goes on in the Sheriff's Department, what you guys do, how you are actual innovators in a lot of ways. But I want to do a short biopic, I guess is the correct term. Sheriff, you served in the U.S. Marines.
Yes.
So we appreciate your service. You graduated from the FBI Academy.
I did.
Which I didn't realize till I looked it up, actually. And, man, over 31 years working in just about every position in the Seminole County Sheriff's Office. So that's pretty amazing. And you advanced through the ranks, including sergeant, lieutenant, captain, major, and chief deputy before becoming sheriff. That's just amazing.
And I know you mentioned before that you were the PIO for the county as well at one point.
Yeah,
right?
I worked a little bit of everything at the sheriff's office, which gives me a great advantage serving as the 10th sheriff in the history.
That's right.
And I think the greatest advantage is it wasn't that long ago where I sat in a majority of the seats of the men and women of this organization. I remember what it felt like to be charged with the responsibility. I remember what it felt like to have great leaders and not so great leaders, and we tried to kind of influence that, but really a long history of great sheriffs. Don Esslinger, who was the sheriff for 26 years, was my mentor, and serving as his chief deputy definitely prepared me to take on this responsibility.
I requested a meeting with him before he left office because of another topic, and I was just shocked that he just said, "Yeah, come on in. Let's chat. Let's make some time. I'll chat with you." So it's supposed to be like he gave me 15 minutes, I think, which was all I thought I needed. But he went on for about probably 45 minutes, and I'm the one that finally had to say, "I'm sorry, Sheriff, but I gotta go," because he was just so into explaining the topic I wanted to talk to him about. So he was a great sheriff.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, very personal. So. In 2017, you were sworn in as Seminole County's 10th sheriff. You lead over 1,400 employees with a budget of about $170 million. So, the sheriff is an important position, of course, but I don't know how many people realize, you're also the boss of all these people, and you have to manage managers who manage these people. So you were re-elected to a second term in 2020 and also a third term in 2024. You oversaw the opening of Hope and Healing Center, which is one of my favorite things, in partnership with Advent Health for substance abuse treatment. So that was very awesome. You want to talk a little bit about that? I'm going to do more of your biopic, but let's
I think it's incredibly important.
Impressive.
Advent Health has been incredibly generous, and I think that when we found ourselves in the midst of an opioid crisis, we realized that over 80% of the people that had become dependent on drugs were overprescribed by people that they trusted. We knew that the big pharma had a big part in this thing, that many people that got addicted to heroin were at one time introduced to the substance simply by following the doctor's orders. So I remember sitting at a luncheon one time and talking to the former CEO of Advent Health, Tim Cook. And I said to him, I'd like to open a drug treatment center to help navigate individuals and families towards sobriety, because, and even in Seminole County, we're having about 180 deaths.
Yeah,
and he said, you know what, we're going to do it. We'll figure out how we're going to fund it. But Advent Health is all in, and that was the catalyst behind creating this thing. And I only gave 3 conditions during that initial meeting. Condition 1, that there be no reference to the sheriff's office in the branding and marketing of the building.
Yeah.
Condition 2, that there be no reference to the county proper, because I felt like if it was a sheriff's office or a county facility, people would be less likely to walk in through the doors. And number 3 was for Advent Health to brand with the same national class that they have at any one of their facilities in the 9 states that they operate in. And they have done that and so much more. So it's people are getting help there, not only for them, but their families and generations to follow.
Well, it just was an amazing time for me when you started that. I remember reading about it and studying it a little bit, and because you were really getting to the root cause of the opioid crisis instead of just having to react to it all the time. So you really wanted to do something about preventing it.
Yeah, we the most significant thing that we can do about crime is to prevent it from occurring in the first place. And, you know, our philosophy has really always been about treating the underlying conditions that lead people down the path to commit crime in the first place. And I think that in constant competition for first place is substance use disorder, mental health challenges, and an absence of good, solid parenting and mentorship in an early age. So those 3 things are focus points, and I think that if you get those right, it is a heck of a lot less expensive down the road, because incarceration and criminal justice costs are incredibly costly as well.
Well, we appreciate all your efforts in that. I know everybody that I've talked to that knows about this particular topic are very appreciative of your efforts, Sheriff, and so am I. So just to continue with the biopic here, you are currently the president of the Florida Sheriff's Association, which we were having a side discussion before the show, meaning that that doesn't mean that you oversee all the sheriffs in the state of Florida, but it is pretty much an honorary position that you are elected from a board of directors, I believe, right? With consisting of all sheriffs.
Yeah, it's like a 6-year process that you serve as chairman of the board and you advance through the ranks. But I think that the greatest honor there is to serve as the voice of sheriffs, all 67 sheriffs across the state of Florida. And you're elected to serve by your peers into that position. So I think that it's a great honor when you're nominated and elected to serve by your peers. It's a great honor, and the Florida Sheriff's Association is by far the best sheriff's association in the country. I think that.
Well, it is now anyway.
Well, I tell you, it sounds I'm biased obviously, but people turn to us to look at the accomplishments that we're making here in Florida.
Yeah. What did it mean to you to be nominated for this by, like you mentioned, your fellow sheriffs?
Yeah, it's humbling, and it came 2 years after I was nominated to serve as president of Major County Sheriffs of America, which is the 100-plus largest sheriff's offices in the country. It's such an honor, again, to serve either in a national capacity or a state capacity and be the voice of so many other people who are good, solid, strong, and credible. It is something that I'm incredibly proud of. I think that our community should be proud of it as well.
No, we're all proud of you, Sheriff, and we appreciate the fact that, I appreciate anyway, the fact that our sheriff in Seminole County is the voice of all the sheriffs in the state of Florida. It means a lot. It says a lot about you too. So let's get into some nuts and bolts, some really cool nerdy stuff.
It is Tech Talk, by the way.
It is Tech Talk. And so one of the things I wanted to talk about is Taser 10. So I did some research on this, like I did with most of the topics we're going to talk about today. It's a newer Taser technology that the Sheriff's Department has recently installed, right? I mean, it's something you guys just started with.
It's amazing technology, David. It's Rick Smith, who is the president and CEO of Axon, has created this lofty pledge to reduce police-related shooting fatalities by 50%. He calls it his moonshot effort.
And who's this fellow again?
And he is the CEO of Axon.
The company.
They have the company that makes
cameras
taser and cameras and all of this.
I know them as cameras.
Yeah, it's all kind of in that same space. And what was incredibly neat, I joke with him half the time, and I call him Tony Stark. But he showed up at our office, and we had worked with him on a national level quite a bit. But he showed up at our office with a makeup of the Taser 10 model in a briefcase he carried. And it was just the demo model of something that he was experiencing. We had developed a relationship and a friendship with him over the years, but this was the new model that he was going to roll out around the world, not only this country.
Right, sure.
And I think that I may have been the fifth person to ever fire the demo. So the CEO brings it to our office, sets up a target, talks about the new technology, and then asks us to serve as one of the 3 policing agencies across the country to demo this product. And I think that we demoed it for 6 or 7 months.
When was this? Like a couple years ago? Or?
This was probably 3 years ago when we did this. Now, what's neat about the Taser 10, prior models of tasers had basically
just 2 points,
2 probes that came out. It came out at a designated angle. So when the user was actually trying to use what we call an intermediate weapon to try to diffuse a situation, they would have to anticipate what that angle was. And of course, if you have one probe going straight, another probe moving at a 45-degree angle, you have to anticipate based upon the distance that you are away from somebody to make sure that you have both of those probes hit.
Right. Yeah. Otherwise, you missed.
With the Taser 10, it is 10 individual darts that you can aim and position. You only need really 2 to make contact.
Yeah,
sometimes
you need, conducted electricity.
Sometimes somebody's wearing a heavy jacket, or you just miss a shot. You don't want to have to resort to more lethal force if the intermediate force does not work.
Right.
So the idea of having 10 different probes not only helps with the individual that may be a threat. Sometimes we have groups of people that may come at us.
Oh, yeah.
So if you're able to hit
two
one
people at the same time.
Well, sometimes we would have people join arms together, and they would put one probe at the end of the stack and the other probe at the other end, and everybody would get some level of a jolt. Now, David, I've had this jolt. I mean, when we first rolled these things out,
you tested it?
I took the 5-second ride on it, and
I don't think I'd volunteer for that.
It wasn't painful, but I will tell you, it was incredibly uncomfortable. And
I think that's one of the changes, the benefits from the 2-lead system too. The 2-lead system can be very painful, right? But this one is less painful, but still activates neuromuscular incapacitation there. So.
And I think a little bit some of the nerdy talk on this thing is the device is actually a computer and a camera as well.
Oh,
so when you pull it,
and it flashes.
It flashes. Right? It has a video positioning of it, and it allows us to forensically examine the device, so we can actually tell if a deputy sheriff or a police officer is doing their daily inspections, checking it. Every time the trigger is pulled, it creates a data log of all of the information. So it minimizes any questions. Once upon a time, even when I first started, now it's 33 years, but when I first started, it was batons.
Yeah.
And OC spray.
Right.
And your willingness to account
Batman
and report
with a shark repellent
everything else
that's
going on. But now you have all the evidence, and not only does it help with accountability, but it also helps primarily with case prosecution, because you can actually see what's going on. The state attorney can take a look at what the defendant is doing.
So it makes
at the
a
time.
video of when they pull the trigger. That's amazing.
That's an unbelievable development, and some of the technology that's going into the police force nowadays is just it's leading the way. And especially, like you've mentioned before, the Seminole County is kind of trying to take those forward steps in a lot of these as well. And we'll be getting into more of those as we continue our special episode here of Tech Talk with Seminole County Sheriff Dennis Lemma joining us right here on WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580. Hey, Hey there, and welcome back to Tech Talk here on WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, Orlando's News and Talk. I'm Greg Rhodes here with David Leavitt, president and founder of Refresh Computer Superstore. And you can contact the Refresh Computer Superstore by calling their free tech support hotline at 407-478-8200. And if you have any other questions during the show, go and leave an open mic using the WDBO app. And now, back to David and our special guest today, Seminole County Sheriff Dennis Lemma.
All right. Thanks, Greg. And thanks, everybody, for listening to this edition of Tech Talk with Refresh Computers. Really proud today to have Sheriff Lemma on the show today talking about all kinds of really cool tech stuff. And Sheriff, off the air, we were talking about some things that the Sheriff's Department actually developed themselves, which took me by surprise. I didn't realize you guys did this. So you have a couple programs we can talk about. Sherlock and Cafe, I guess, is another one, right? So what's up? What are they about?
So the catalyst behind us doing our own thing was, some of these software packages for an organization our size cost millions, literally millions of dollars. And for some organizations, they have to do that. And of course, there's an up cost each and every year when they try to modernize their programs and equipment. But
license fees and all that stuff.
Yeah. So what we said is, why don't we train our folks? We've got incredibly talented individuals and programmers that are part of our team. Why don't we train them and then challenge them to customize what works for us? And that's actually what they did. We have a Cafe system, which is a police reporting system that every time an incident would occur or something would happen where a deputy or police officer, for that matter, would document something, it all goes into a database called Cafe. We develop it, we write it, and then we give it to all of our municipalities at cost because there is a great benefit for the person who's stopped in the city of Altamont Springs to be able to access a database and find out whether or not an unincorporated deputy sheriff working in any area of the county also came in contact with this person. So it shares information. But I think one of the neatest things that we did, and we do that with our RMS, or our records management system. Yep. We do it with our CAD, our computer-aided dispatch. That's when you call into 911. And we do it with our MyCAD, which is a version of that the deputies and police officers view from their patrol vehicles. It's when they open up their laptop computers. That's the MyCAD. So we write all of that ourselves in Seminole County.
And it uses is this the program that uses a GPS coordinates as well?
So that is that is Sherlock. And I remember 15 years ago going on a vacation before all of our cell phones had GPS, and I remember walking into I think it was Sam's Club or somewhere, and they had a $300 GPS unit, the old square units that have the antenna on the back that attach to the windshield of the car. And I put it in there, and I went to my destination, and I thought it was incredibly neat, a lot easier than open up a map book. But there was road construction, and I was not able to turn into the driveway that the GPS told me I needed to go to. And then it kept yelling at me, turn around, you've arrived at your destination, make a U-turn, make a U-turn. And as I was sitting there listening to that on vacation, I said, what would be neat? The technology exists, but we've got GPS in all of our patrol cars. If we had a similar system that will allow us to pre-program certain types of arrests and things in areas of sensitivity, on
basically
our patrol.
Right where things have happened in the past.
Right where things are happening in the past. And then the example that I gave to create this was if somebody had been arrested and released as a child molester, and a deputy was just randomly driving up and down a road, this Sherlock system will now alert the deputy audibly that they're passing 101 Oak Street or Elm Street, and that the person living at that location had been arrested and released on this charge. And I think it's helpful, too, if you're looking for a burglary and you're investigating a burglary that occurred in early morning hours, and then you can input every person within that geographic area that has been previously arrested for property crimes and have it populate there.
So for the child predator thing part, I think it's interesting because off air you were talking about how it's useful for the deputy driving by, because obviously if there's like children's toys in the front yard or something, that will be a big, huge red flag.
You think, but just as a random person, David, we pass by locations all of the time and don't give it a second look.
Right.
I suggest that we now do, because we have the access to at least populate certain things, certain areas that are of concern. So if you had a child abduction, you definitely would want to populate all of the locations there and take a second look at all of those homes. Makes it much easier.
And impressive that this is all developed in-house within the Seminole County
impressive.
Sheriff's Department.
In-house.
So again, right here in your backyard, you're listening to a special episode of Tech Talk here on WDBO with our special guest, Seminole County Sheriff Dennis Lemma. More on what Seminole County is doing to police our community coming up next. Hey there, and welcome to Tech Talk here on WDBO 107.3 FM and AM 580, Orlando's news and talk. I'm Greg Rhodes here with David Leavitt, president and founder of Refresh Computer Superstore. You can contact the Refresh Computer Superstore by calling their free tech support hotline at 407-478-8200. And if you have any other questions during the show, go ahead and leave an open mic using the WDBO app. You can also check out their website at refreshcomputers.net. or stop in at the Refresh Computer Superstore in Longwood at 820 East State Road 434, just 3.5 miles east of I-4 in Longwood. Store hours are Monday through Saturday, 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. And if you're listening to the show here on Saturday, that means you still have time to stop by. They'll be open until 7 p.m. today. And now, back to David and our special guest today, Sheriff Dennis Lemma of Seminole County.
All right. Thanks, Greg. And thanks, everybody, for listening to this special edition of Tech Talk with Refresh Computers. I certainly hope you're having as much fun listening to this show as I am hosting it with the sheriff here, because it's all about technology in Seminole County and what we're doing at the Sheriff's Department to make the lives better for all the citizens here in Seminole County and people that happen to pass through Seminole County. Sheriff, we were talking about, before the break, we were talking about a couple different programs, one of them being Cafe, and we didn't get enough time to finish talking about that one before the break. So can you go into what Cafe is again and what it's doing for us and how it helps us?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So Cafe is our in-house developed reporting system. And that's shared with every municipality in Seminole County and actually some areas contiguous to Seminole County. And I think that the greatest benefit there is to enrich that database with information.
Yep.
So if you come in contact with somebody who had been involved in an incident in a neighboring jurisdiction, there's no gap in information sharing there.
Right.
And I think that any person who's worked over the last 30 years remembers what it was like 30 years ago. And in many of our district offices and headquarters, we would have clipboards that lined the walls. And we would do the 2-hole punch in the top of every single piece of paper that went in. And we would put every single report that came in over the past 3 or 4 days on the bulkhead or on the wall. So deputies coming on shift could literally read through those papers.
And hope they retain everything.
Which was nearly impossible.
Yeah.
Hot calls would come out. We knew that deputies that are in the office are not best serving their community.
Right.
We want people out in the community available to respond to calls. We knew that we had to streamline this process. And as technology kind of evolved, with the introduction to that I'm a little bit of a nerd. I think I'm a lot of a nerd when it comes to this. And, I was one of the first early adopters of the pocket PC that synced to the computer in the cradle and all of that, just because of a convenience. But when you look at technology, how has it evolved right now, you may have a deputy that was off on the previous day, may even been out of town the previous day.
Yeah.
And coming in contact with citizens that have questions. What happened over the past 2 days? Why was the helicopter flying overhead last night? And more often than not, prior to this technology, the deputy would simply answer, I don't know, but I'll find out.
Right.
Now with this computer system, it grays out every call that has already been handled and taken care of. If you click on a call for service, you can actually access geographically the report that was taken within the area. And then if you click on it again, if it resulted in an apprehension or an arrest of an individual, it will pull up the arrest sheet, the booking form, the photograph, and all of that. So all of this information
This is like
at our
instantaneous,
fingertips.
right? Yeah.
And again, we have absolutely geniuses that work for little to nothing when you look at what government pays people. You know, David, what
these are
programmers.
employees of the sheriff's department.
These are employees for the sheriff's office
developing this technology.
Yeah, they believe in the cause. This is their way to give back to the whole policing initiative and policing message. And I'm so proud of what they're able to accomplish.
Man, that is really cool, Sheriff. I had no idea that you guys were into that. That's one of the reasons why, we have you on the show today. So, there's some things we know about, we're talking about. There's some things that we didn't know about.
And it saves me from a lot of vendors at conferences, too. They look and they say, well, you're Seminole. I know you have a team that does all your own stuff. I'm not going to try to sell you anything.
And I find it interesting that, the municipalities in Seminole County get to use this as well. And maybe some of the bordering counties or other municipalities close by. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, I think that's great that you're showing that kind of community policing as opposed to separated departments and not working together. As sometimes we do see with some of those different departments. I did want to ask just as far as the development of these programs, how have you seen that go around with other counties? Do you see other counties trying to maybe copy a little bit of what you're doing? Because, again, that's not just that it saves you from having to deal with those vendors, but it also saves you from the cost of dealing with those vendors as well.
Yeah, we've had policing organizations outside of the contiguous area of Seminole County request these systems. Probably the most recent was Flagler County, when Sheriff Rick Staley was up there. He was familiar from his time working locally in Orange County Sheriff's Office. He wanted to adopt the system. I'm not sure what he has now. States like Louisiana were familiar with the program and all of that. And what we said was, it makes sense to expand it in the contiguous areas of Seminole County, because we, in many cases, are looking for the same bad people.
That's right. Yeah.
And
that makes sense.
to move it beyond contiguous areas and have a gap in coverage does not make much sense to me, because it does take time, effort, and energy to maintain this. Now, for the agencies that are using it, we give it to them at cost, and it is true cost of what it costs us to maintain it. And we train some of their folks in order to help and maintain it as well. But when you have consolidated dispatch in like Seminole County, we at the Seminole County Sheriff's Office dispatch for all 7 police agencies, all the municipalities. There's actually 8 police departments when you include the airport police, and we're not doing theirs. But it just makes sense to have one system, one database that's there. But again, it serves the community's best interest, and I look at my role as the chief law enforcement officer of the county to be concerned with how effective we work together. And every one of these chiefs of police are close personal friends, and we work in harmony together for the good of the people.
Yeah, I know many of them, and they're all good folks, that's for sure. And and I'm proud to be a citizen of Seminole County and have a business in Seminole County that we have law enforcement around that. Heck, they know what they're doing. They're at the tip of technology as far as they can go with it, and I really appreciate that, Sheriff. So let's talk a little bit about the underwater drones. So I find this fascinating. This is like a really nerdy thing for me. So it's a system called Deep Trekker, which remotely operated vehicles, ROVs. How are law enforcement personnel using these underwater drones, and what's used to train them?
So it is incredibly interesting. And prior to a few years ago, I did not know that underwater drones existed.
I didn't know either.
I knew that drones were in the air, and that people were making good use with military and policing agencies for those. But underwater drone is an incredibly neat concept, because prior to this, a lot of evidence that we find and sadly bodies that we have to look to recover are in the most murkiest, the most dangerous environments, whether it's dangers associated with nature, alligators and snakes and all of these things in zero visibility areas, or dangers associated with vehicle crashes and wrecks and things that have known to become harmful for divers who have zero visibility underwater. So in many cases, if they're searching for something, whether it's a body or a gun or a piece of equipment, they're doing basically blind searches. They're swimming down to the bottom of a lake or a waterway and just putting their hand on the bottom, conducting searches. They sometimes will run nets and they'll do
drag
different things. But you'd have a dive team of 6 or 7, 8, 10 divers out there for days trying to look for pieces of equipment. Now they can drop this drone in the water that has all of the modern technology that you can find with cameras and infrared and all of these things. And it can actually go on a grid search pattern where it can then search the bottom, try to find something, and then strategically place our dive team in a particular area. So
like an underwater Roomba.
Yeah, underwater Roomba is exactly what it is. And in addition to, it's a Roomba if you had a Roomba that had the opportunity to obtain items from the bottom of the lake.
Oh, wait.
Because it actually has hands and grabs and arms that you can control from the shore. So it is a fancy remote control. If the Roomba or the underwater drone spots something that's a gun or a piece of evidence and an equipment on the bottom, it then has the ability to use arms to pick that piece of evidence up and bring it back to the shore.
Can those arms be taught to move my couch so the Roomba can get under?
They're not that strong. They
pick up the couch.
Gotcha.
Sadly, we haven't found any that can lift a body. If unfortunately there's somebody who's deceased in the water. But I tell you,
locate the body.
They can locate the body, and then they can strategically put the dive team on a location. Because sometimes our dive teams will go out there, and we work with our surrounding areas. If there's a significant investigation, we will ask Orange County and Volusia County to join with our dive team. And you think the costs associated with that, though, when you've got 15 divers on a boat diving for 3 days, when you can just drop a machine in the water and say you're likely to look at this spot over here because everything else looks pretty clear or clean. And then you look at Seminole County. I mean, we're 350 or so square miles, but nearly 50 of those square miles are waterways.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of water, a lot of opportunity to deploy that and use that.
Are you at liberty to give an example or two of where the underwater drones really helped out in a tough situation?
Yeah, we've I know that we've used the underwater drones to look for pieces of evidence. We've found handguns that were used in crimes with that. We've found vehicles that have driven off the road where there was no signs of tracks going off of the road, and we found vehicles that were there. We found some vehicles that were abandoned and stolen and then run into the lake. I mean, I think when you look at any of these sci-fi movies and these horror movies and things that are in Hollywood, it seems like the first area that people go to get rid of evidence, whether it's a car or a body or a gun, is the lake, right? and I think we recognize that, we know that, and it's a little bit easier when you're in South Florida and the water is clear and you can see to the bottom. But you get out there on Lake Jessup, it takes a special type of person to get off a dive boat in Lake Jessup.
And these people have to be trained, obviously, to use these. Is it typically like a scuba diver that would be trained to operate the little trekker?
Yeah, we have our dive team that is specially trained with it. But when we first obtained it, we did a little press on it, and they allowed me to grab it and put it in my hand and play with it from the shore. And quite frankly, it wasn't that difficult. I'm sure I was doing it wrong, but it wasn't that difficult to move it. It's like levers, and it's got a camera on it where you can see what the drone is looking at and kind of move it around. And I think it resembles a lot of what maybe people are more familiar with is the drones that are in the air, like a remote control being held in their hands and doing that. It's the underwater drone.
Well, while we have a minute or two before the next break, speaking of in the air.
Yeah.
Your Airbus helicopters, you have two of those, right?
We have two of them.
Two of them, and they are equipped with this flare cameras, if you will. They're the MX-10 thermal cameras based on my research. Can you get in a little bit about what they're used for and how often, really, are these helicopters up in the air? Are they up there all the time?
Yeah.
So we
have two helicopters, and Seminole County being a small county geographically with a population density that makes us the fourth most densely populated county per square mile. Having helicopters to be able to get up in search and rescue missions or crime missions is incredibly beneficial. We can get to any call for service in the county in less than 7 minutes from launch at the airport to get out there. So specifically to the FLIR, it's the forward-looking infrared system, and we only use that system when we are on an official call for service that would warrant use of that
So they're not
technology.
up there like
they're
patrolling,
not
seeing what they can find.
Yeah, we're always incredibly mindful of Fourth Amendment and search and seizure, and
I know you are.
I
appreciate about you.
Yeah, we want to be mindful of that. So in situations where the FLIR would be turned on, I think the largest situation is either a hot call, which is there's been a crime that has been committed. There has been a victim who has given some type of statement, whether it's a verbal statement or a formal statement, and there's somebody on the run. What we do in those cases is the FLIR can look at things like heat sources, so we can tell if a car has recently been driven. We can look at the tires on a car, because the tires on the car recently been driven will have white rings, heat rings around them to see that. And, of course, we can see suspects hiding in a wooded area as deputies are on the ground. So from an officer safety standpoint, it's incredibly beneficial. But I think the greatest benefit to that technology is missing endangered people.
Yeah.
We were able to recover people who have wandered away from their home in the wooded area with the heat source.
Wow, that's great.
You've been listening to a special episode of Tech Talk here on WDBO with special guest Seminole County Sheriff Dennis Lemma. In the break, I'm going to try and see if I can convince him to let me borrow that as a Roomba going forward to move the couch for me. But we'll have more with Dennis Lemma here coming up after the break on 107.3 FM and AM 580. Hey there, and welcome back to Tech Talk here on WDBO, 107.3 FM and AM 580, Orlando's News and Talk. I'm Greg Rhodes, here with David Leavitt, president and founder of Refresh Computer Superstore. We're joined today by special guest, Seminole County Sheriff Dennis Lemma.
All right. Thanks, Greg, and thanks, everybody, for listening to Tech Talk with Refresh Computers, and thank you, Sheriff Lemma, for being our special guest today. You know, we only have a few minutes left, Sheriff, and we didn't get to even touch the topic yet, which is a hot topic tech-wise with a lot of people, is the use of body cameras. Can you explain how Seminole County Sheriff's Department uses body cameras, and in what circumstances do they turn on? And well, I'll let you take it from here.
Yeah, I think that's the fundamental basic baseline of police technology that I think people who are not in this business can relate to, the advancement of technology and kind of monitoring. And every one of our deputy sheriffs and police officers in this county have a body camera, but the body camera syncs with the dash cam video that syncs with the taser that we talked about a little bit earlier. So with the deployment of the taser, it actually turns on the body camera and all of the other technology that is connected with it. But what a lot of people may not realize is when there is an incident that may occur, actually it records 30 seconds back before the camera even turns on. So that is mindful, because if you're involved in a particular situation, you're in an interaction. You want to know what
happened before.
You want to know what happened that led up to that, because by turning it on during an emergency, if you manually put it on, you're going to miss probably the most significant aspect of what occurred. I think what's also interesting to notice is when a deputy turns on their emergency lights, it automatically activates their camera systems. It automatically turns it on. And it's not because we don't trust the deputy to turn the stuff on themselves. It's automatically turned on because we feel like you don't have to think about it. You have something more important going on if you're turning your lights on than worrying about hitting a switch and doing all of these other things. But another aspect of that is if a deputy drives a patrol car at a certain speed, and I think we have it set now to 75 miles per hour or maybe 80 miles per hour, if they travel a certain speed, even if they don't activate the lights, the camera and the recording systems automatically come on.
Very good.
And this is, again, reviewed by supervisors, reviewed by deputies as a part of case evidence. As they're writing their narrative of what happened, they can reflect back on their own video and make sure that they're giving a proper account of the circumstances that occurred. And I think the greatest thing is it aids in the prosecution of cases,
Right.
and minimizes police-related complaints that we've had. We would have people come in and make complaints, and when they found out that we had body camera of the entire incident, they said, literally happened. Oh, I think it was Orange County, not Seminole County, where this happened. So it's a great benefit with technology.
I can imagine that happening. Well, look, Sheriff, we're out of time. I really appreciate you coming here. It means so much, and I'm sure it means a lot to the Seminole County residents and the surrounding area to hear about all the technology used by the Seminole County Sheriff's Department. And so we're really proud to have you here right here on WDBO with Tech Talk. So we'll be talking to you again next week.